Can there ever be too many rom-coms? Wedding Season is now on Netflix, and it's cute, but does it offer anything new or fresh? Pressured by their parents to find spouses, Asha and Ravi pretend to date in order to survive a summer of weddings, but they find themselves falling for each other as they struggle to balance who they are with who their parents want them to be. Now, this is a rom-com with a predominantly Indian cast, but it's directed by the dude who brought us Failure to Launch with Matthew McConaughey and Sarah Jessica Parker. Wedding Season stars Pallavi, Sharda, and Suraj Sharma as Asha and Ravi, respectively. Now, they get set up by their parents, but neither was really looking for a date or even marriage. And they both happen to be attending the same wedding, and then they get pummeled with questions on dating and marriage from the aunties that are in attendance. And then so they craft a plan to fake date for the remainder of their 14 weddings that they're both going to be attending together. That sounds tiring. But this is going to keep the gossiping aunties at bay, and then hopefully is also going to quiet their parents as well. In true predictable rom-com fashion, Asha and Ravi begin to have feelings for each other. And we all know that rom-coms are very predictable and obvious. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But if they can be sweet, tell a romantic story, and make us root for the relationship, that pretty much makes it a watchable thing. But then again, what sets some apart from others is if they can do something fresh or new. So does this one? There's a massive theme of family within the storyline. First with Asha. Now, she doesn't have the greatest relationship with her mom, and even sometimes her dad. She's close to her sister, but Asha is also trying to break away sort of from the traditions, or at least rote expectations that seem to permeate her family and friends. While there's familial conflict that brews with Asha, none of it gets overly dramatic or even really tense or hurtful. Now, there's passion and emotion present, but it doesn't get ugly. I love that family also works its way into Asha's job. Now, there are several moments that are either funny or touching, but all of them then point back to the element of family. Now, with Ravi, there are also contentious moments within his family. We get a glimpse into some areas that feel like they could be cultural norms, and I appreciate the insight that this provided. Education and employment are said to be almost of the highest importance within Ravi's family and within the people in his life. So if somebody doesn't necessarily live up to another's expectations, it can be seen as shameful or even used against that person. Now, there's some great messages within this that work to address goals, dreams, expectations, and what success looks like. And some of the ways that are examined are a bit cheesy and sometimes they're even laughable, but they're always endearing despite the cheese. Now, for example, Asha's sister is engaged to a white guy, and the only reason that his race is important is that he is trying super hard to integrate into the Indian culture. Now, most of the time it's really cringy, but he's never doing it to make fun or be disrespectful. And each and every time we see an earnest desire to make his bride-to-be happy, and then more so, make her parents feel like he's worthy of their daughter. Now, he's ridiculous so much of the time, but there is a moment towards the end of the film that had me laughing out loud and then even tear up just a bit at a very sweet gesture that he makes. And I was drawn to so many of the characters. I like that while some share characteristics, they all feel balanced within the relationships. So if one person in a relationship is more reality-based, focused on practicalities, the other is softer and more inclined to dream. Now, these complement each other well, but they also add some laughs along the way. And the theme of family is so ingrained in all of the story parts, sometimes prominently in a storyline and other times just used as a portion of wisdom that's imparted from one character to another. The continuous focus on family, though, and all of its complexities help to make this feel fresh. Now, I know it's not the first or the only rom-com to have a central theme of family, but this did stand out to me as refreshing and not so run-of-the-mill average. Now, I do think there was an opportunity to give a tiny bit more exposition on why the aunties that I had mentioned earlier had so much care or concern as to Asha's or Ravi's choices. Now, I'm sure there's a reason, and maybe they're just busybodies, but it felt like maybe there was more there. And something that I am a bit bummed about, especially because I've been delving more and more into Indian cinema, is that there is only one large-scale dance number in this. And it doesn't come until the very end as the credits start to roll. I mean, as we were watching, I turned to my wife and I was like, why couldn't this have come way earlier in the film? I mean, especially given the fact that Asha and Ravi have to attend a bunch of weddings. So then something like this would just fit naturally. I am glad that we get to see it, but I just wish that it had more prominence. This is just over an hour and a half, and the film uses the time efficiently. We get to see Asha and Ravi attend some weddings, but after the first one where they have the conversation to begin their fake dating, the rest are just shown in bits and pieces, where we'll get some dialogue and maybe a little bit of action, and then the story moves on. So it never bogs us down with unnecessary content that doesn't add to the story or the romance. And the same goes for this project that Asha's working on. She's undertaking a massive research project for her job, and while we get to see bits and pieces of her working on it, it would be very repetitive and then ultra boring to watch scene after scene of her pouring through the paperwork. And I'm glad the filmmakers choose to keep storytelling tight and efficient for us, getting us from point A to B to C effectively and in an engaging way. Now, most of the comedy within this is lighthearted and it will cause you some chuckles, but don't think that this is a gutbuster. I mean, it's enough to cause near constant smiling, and then it's sweet enough that it touches the heart. So overall, Wedding Season is a funny, touching, and slightly cheesy rom-com that uses the central theme of family to make it feel new and different. The acting is wonderful, with the two leads creating characters that are dynamic and charismatic and work well together. I do wish there would have been singing and dancing in this because, given the context of all the weddings, this seemed like a perfect opportunity to include those numbers. And even though this is highly predictable with a very obvious story arc, I still had a lot of fun making this a great movie to put on when you need a smile. There's no sex or nudity, some profanity, and no violence. I give Wedding Season 4 out of 5 couches. Now, I know I've asked this before, but what's one of your favorite rom-coms? One that I love is a bit older, but it's called What's Up, Doc? Now, if you haven't seen that one, you really need to. I mean, it is a classic. But let me know your favorites in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.